Wholeness, welcome. This is Josh, Innerskilled, and today I have David Deighton with me. What's going on?
Well, it's a pleasure to be here and to explore whatever we're going to explore today.
Well, right on. So, who is this guy, Daniel Deighton? What kind of work does he do?
Well, I'm an abstract artist, and 6 years ago, fueled by the outrage that I see online and greater societal divides, and seeing people spending less and less time talking to each other, uh, thought I got to go do something in person, face to face. And how do you do that, right? I mean, how do you go talk to strangers, for example? Where can that be? What spaces are those places in our society? How do we speak to strangers that we may disagree with, and disagree about what? And so I thought, well, politics is polarizing. Let's do the hardest one, or one of the harder ones. Let's do that. See what happens. And so I embarked on a journey, a transformative journey to find strangers in a place that's suitable for conversations to happen. And that brought me from street corners in New York, which are a bad idea. I mean, it's an okay, give it a go, but it's going to be difficult, to airports, to wherever the encounters would be. But it brought me to go to national parks in the United States and to free speech areas, which are designated areas where you might see somebody, Jehovah Witnesses or something like this, and they invest that space. I would bring art to that place, and bring and take art speech to another level, and be outdoors in places where people don't expect it, and then engage with people walking by with artwork, art installations, questions, and just experiment and use that space and see where it takes me, and have conversations with strangers on the taboo subject of politics, non-confrontationally, and see what happens. And it's brought me to amazing, amazing places.
Well, cool. What a great idea, actually. I mean, speaking of confrontational places, I mean, we could just easily stay and complain about this curtain and how horrendously gaudy it is, right? And complain about that. But you are, do something safe behind a keyboard and complain about something or doing something like this, which is kind of ironic because here we are on a podcast online. But, I think it's really admirable to do this. When I read this, my politics tend to be kind of anti-politics. I look at politics as an emotional con game that's designed to trigger people out and then divide people. And so then the ruling class can kind of look upon these plebs that can't even you can't even get along amongst themselves. So we need to step in here and do some control. And we kind of have a right now to control people because they obviously can't get along amongst themselves, look at their behavior, they're like little children and things like this, which I think is ridiculous because of these divide and conquer tactics they do around politics, and it's kind of designed to trigger people out emotionally. And yeah, it is a taboo topic, So I thought that's where I come with politics now. I just try to not do anything whatsoever with them anymore because I've almost written off the entire thing. So when I saw what you're doing here, I thought, oh, wow, he's actually trying to help in a really unique way. And I consider my way a unique way and maybe helpful, but I don't have any real solutions in a sense, other than internal spiritual things and eventually getting to the point where we can all take self-responsibility and help each other voluntarily and not need another group of individuals to control another group of individuals. But we're so far from that now. I can't have this anarchy without rulers now because we're just not at this level on a collective yet. We're not self-responsible enough. We're not willing to help each other enough, I feel, yet. So of course we need some kind of governance yet, which govern means to control and ment means mind. So it's basically a kind of mind control, right? I mean, that's if we don't have to have people on every street corner with guns making sure people follow rules and do as the leaders say. It's a soft power. It's in the mind. It's kind of a war on consciousness. So I thought, wow, I normally wouldn't approach this thing like this because it would take a lot of my time and energy and put myself at risk for no real reason. Because a lot of these problems, they seem they're politically created to begin with. So how is another political solution going to solve a problem that was started with politics to begin with. So usually I'm drawn to things that I know that I get kind of maybe uneasy or would write off. So there's something here I need to look at, because I normally don't want to be interested in something like this. So I deliberately took this on. But this one has the added benefit of you're actually doing something new and unique, and doing it in a kind, peaceful way. And you're putting yourself out there. And yeah, it takes a lot of effort and experimentation, things that I like to do too when it's called for. So tell me about, I mean, just let's start off with more of a kind of a clickbaity thing here. Like, tell me some of the more maybe extreme situations you got into when you did this. Like, what's the kind of the worst and the best that happened from
Mm.
traveling around and doing this, you know? And then I want to get into this so-called free speech zones, which I think is a kind of a joke. I mean, free speech should be anywhere, right?
Mm.
Except for no fire in a theater, you know, that's causing harm and danger like that, right? But I mean, if we're relegated to being able to the First Amendment to whatever, you know, little tiny place we're confined to do it, yeah, of course don't really have any other choice, because that's the thing. But to me, it's completely, absolutely ridiculous to have these things. We should be able to exercise this whenever we see fit, you know, but
Mm.
also have to deal with the consequences potentially too. So, all
So
right.
where are those places?
Well,
Where are the places we'd be able to talk to one another outside of our in group, outside of our own echo chambers? Where would
that's
those
right.
places
It
be?
should be everywhere, but it takes courage and
Where would
willingness
the
to do it. Yeah.
But where are they everywhere? Where would that look like? So I'm
Wherever
driving
I
in my
go,
car. Yeah, I'm
yeah,
driving in my car.
everywhere.
How would
Anywhere
the
where
car?
anywhere I
See,
can
for
open this mouth, anywhere I can open this mouth should be a free speech zone, you know,
see, I would
to
say
me.
the free speech zone would be the place, every place that I'd be able to listen actively to the other person,
Yes,
rather
and
than the
that's really
place
important too. So that also
where
comes
I'd be
with
able to talk.
listening. That's right. So the very important point where I can also listen to others' free speech. Good point.
Right. So, for example, the car. A lot of Americans are in their car going from one place to the other. So that's definitely an echo chamber of sorts. So that doesn't help. That's not a good place. You're at work. There's a lot of constraints in that space as well. But that is a place where it could happen. That's definitely a place where it can be done. I don't have one of those places. I'm an independent artist. I don't work in an office. But other people have used my practice and used it in offices, and that works well. Okay, churches and other type of echo chambers is difficult. That is one space where everybody kind of, there's disagreement on things. There's a lot to explore, but I'd rather see the one extreme to the other and to see how that functions. There's a lot of other places rather than national parks. It's just that it's about when we speak to others, it's about the space that we decide to use, and our senses are more in tune to our surroundings, and we're able maybe to use more of our other senses. The wind's blowing, you feel the wind upon you. There might be smells, there's a feeling of touch, and there's the light, and all this. And if you're on a busy street corner with a lot of traffic going by and you have a place to go to, the presence of mind is difficult to ask somebody, can you please be present with me right now? All right. That's asking one thing. If you're going to ask then political questions, you got too many questions. So I chose an area where people are naturally more present, maybe unconsciously without even knowing so.
So
And
I was
so,
confused here. I was commenting on these designated free speech zones. Like
yeah, no,
the
I get
first
it.
one I
There's
saw was in
control.
an airport, and I'm just like, yeah, I can see the convenience. There's probably a lot of people giving people hassle, so I understand the practicality of it. But for me, it does something in the mind where, okay, you have free speech, but condition one, condition two,
Right. No,
condition
I
three.
get it. I get it.
But yeah, but no, you're talking about like a conducive space for
Mm.
speech where it actually supports both speaker and listener and connection and more things that are natural. That's right. And something outside of an echo chamber. So yeah, the two different things we're talking about here, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm able to. I have these conversations on the top of a mountain. I go to popular hikes, go to the top of a mountain, and have conversations up there. Not a problem. It's when I set up an art installation that might blow away and hurt the public. I have to like show why how that it's secure to put in this space. and
You
people
mean
deny.
literally, right? You're not talking
Yeah,
about like,
literally.
okay, this is such a political message, it's gonna knock your socks off,
No,
right?
no,
You're
no.
talking about
Literally, the
physical
art
things gonna
installation
yeah.
can fly down the Grand Canyon. How
Yeah.
heavy is this thing? And I have to, of course,
Yes,
you
sure.
know, I get it. It makes sense. But there are spaces that they want this. They delegated for free speech to happen. And apparently, that's an offset of a repercussion from our Occupy movements, and it's a need of control. And the superintendent that runs the parks decides where these places can be, and they can be at the back of a parking lot where nobody goes. So those are very interesting. And as an artist, I want to explore those spaces, even maybe not for a week, but for a day. I'll go to the back of a parking lot and see why, why is this? Just to, so I'm not talking to anyone, but at that time, but I am having that exchange, and that does help me in the process. But that's just my personal experience in my journey, if you want. Where it's most fruitful for me is when I'm actually, of course, engaging with somebody new, and they take up wanting to answer my. I have three questions I always ask, always the same. Last 6 years, always the same questions, and I'll share them right now. It's I ask people, how would you describe the political system of the United States of America? People can change that for India, Canada, whatever, and they can change politics for religion if they want to. Point is that at this point, I'm just listening and using all my senses, including the mind, and calming it down in order to be there and present for the person. And of course, it didn't start that way because I'd be triggered by often the facts and opinions that people would say. I let that fall upon me like rain and let it go. I'm looking for bridges, commonalities in what they're saying. And the second question is, describe your feelings or reactions to the current state of US politics. And once again, you can change U.S. politics to Canadian religion. What I don't know, whatever you can change it. I use that. That's my taboo. That's my subject. And then people talk some more, and I'm leaning in. We're leaning in. All of a sudden, sounds disappear. We're leaning into one another, and they're opening up. And then the third question is kind of a game where we finish. I ask them to finish the sentence. Politics in the United States, blank, and then they keep on going. And so that happens. And, the first few years I'd hear all these things that just really make me upset. I was like, I can't believe you're saying this. This is insane. You're insane. I'm not insane. Of course I'm sane. You're not. Things like this. And then slowly leaning in, I was no longer concerned so much for facts and opinion about the politics, if you want, because for me, it's not, we're all political animals that every one of our actions with intention is a political act. So rather than the politics of politicians, which I don't concern myself with, is the act of us as community, as humanity. So anyway, they answer those questions, and then usually I ask them to find one word that kind of brings it all together. Yeah, one word that you want to put out there, and then they give me one word, and that word usually is the opposite of all the rage that they had before on the questions, and how infuriated they were with the state of affairs or whatever. And they usually have a message of like hope and cohesion, and that's what they're aiming for, and that synthesizes inside of this one word. And when we've done that, I invite them to do just the practice we've just done, and to do it with someone else. And I'll share some tools with them of how they can do that. First of all, the story of our encounter in person, face to face, just as our conversation is today, speaking to one another. And we are face to face in a sense, through the screen. I can see you, you can see me, the listeners can
Virtually,
hear us.
yes.
Yeah, virtually. That's the story that they can take, and the tool that they can use as to start their own conversation. I was listening to David and Josh, and they were talking to one another about this. And I want to ask you these questions. And because where does it take us? That's what's interesting. It takes us into a space, first of all, where we're opening up to someone else, to a stranger. We're hearing what they have to say. We're finding bridges, and these bridges are, I don't look for facts or opinion. They're just an emotion. Okay, you're frustrated about the state of affairs. Guess what? I am too. And not only that, I'm that libtard. I'll even be that commie for it if you want. That person you were complaining about. I'm that person. And guess what? I'm that person. I share something with you, and they resonate with that. And hundreds of conversations. I was so surprised. I don't have any conversations where it went badly because people were curious enough to have this conversation to start with. So that type, that person is willing to have that exchange with me. But I never had one with a confrontation that ensued because all I was doing was giving them the space to express themselves and um, and also to share that there was this commonality, to show them that we can find a bridge even from our polar opposites, to show that there's no them or other, it's us, that we were in that moment. And they could do the same with others. And I invite them to speak to relatives, the ones that they no longer speak to because of they've had political arguments and they no longer want to talk about it. I say, go for it, try it out, and it's going to be painful. It's not gonna be easy because you're gonna be triggered. Try to let that go and find something you have in common. Look for an emotional word. Share that. Start from there. Unfortunately, we have to go all the way down to this foundation and consolidate this. And that's where our power is. I think we're extremely powerful in this space as political animals. The politicians do their things, the algorithm does it, trying to create outrage and divide this and capture our attention. But as individuals, we have this power that we can do small acts at any time of political action at different times during the day, during the week, when the occasion arises. We can jump in and do this. And that's where I've come to currently, and it's still evolving. But that's where it's been really beautiful in a sense. There's a lot of beauty. It's been transformative for me because a lot of my anger is dissipated because I've been bombarded, maybe, that I don't feel the shocks of what I'm hearing. I'm also finding things that are redefining some of my own ideas, thanks to them, to us, or whatever you want to say, uh,
Sure.
and moving ahead. And it resonates. I mean, the weirdest thing is when people I think would cry. It's the first time they have somebody in years that's listened to them on this taboo subject. And it's sometimes easy to open up to a stranger more than it is to your actual relative or someone who's close. And that creates awkward situations in public. I've had a few people start to cry, and then their spouses come over and say, what did you do to my spouse? What did you say? It's like, no, 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 I was just listening.
That's great.
It's in the incomprehension of the situation where things happen. But when we lean in, we have understanding.
Well, I applaud you for your courage and kindness too, because those are some of my core values, courage and kindness. It takes a lot of courage to do what you did, you know? And I would say, if I had to guess, one of the things that helped with anger is that kindness, because that is the classic antidote to anger and ill will is loving kindness. And if I have any kind of like, politics, it's that ideally, right? For the most part. Now I fall short of it all the time, but that's where my heart really feels like it's being useful and nourished and uplifted. Sometimes that kindness means, okay, may you, not you, but in the royal you, come to learn the errors of your ways and change for your own well-being and for that of others. Sometimes that's the kindness that's called for, right? Yeah, yeah. So
Mhm.
that's the kind of the more practical kindness instead of just normally think of in Buddhist circles as loving kindness, well wishing, and oopy goopy, which is great and very good for goodwill, but sometimes it needs to be more practical like that. Now, yeah, the
What's oopie goopie?
oopy
What's oopie?
goopy to me, before I got in touch with my heart, there's this one teacher online that he taught saying these I love yous to your own heart. And it just didn't, from where I was at the time, it felt too saccharine or sugary. It didn't feel honest and real. So, but even that acknowledgement of that is kind and loving, right? To be honest with myself. Okay, this just doesn't feel like it doesn't. I don't like the way this feels right now, but that honesty, but I could see the value into it where I was aspiring towards it. But right now where I was at, it didn't feel the way that how can I put it? Yeah, everybody else seemed to be into it and getting benefit. And at the time, it just didn't feel right. But I could also recognize that, okay, I can see if I keep at this, that it will lead to that and do that. So
Mm.
instead of lying to myself, or pretending that wasn't the way it is, then that honesty is an act in itself of that self love and self kindness. Yeah. So maybe
I just
I'll
want to say, I went through Oopie
please. Yeah.
Goopie too. I went through Oopie Goopie as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that a
Yeah.
word? Is that an English word
No,
or?
I think I just made that up, but it
Okay, okay,
might
I like
actually
it.
be. We need to look at
I
the
like that.
dictionary,
It
I
should be.
guess.
It
Yeah.
should be. It should
It's
be.
a kind of an onomatopoeia, isn't it? Like it sounds almost like kind of the effect we're after here. Yeah.
Like that.
So let me jump in and answer these questions. I want to get to your well, the other comment, like what I'm triggered by. To me, I tell people I like to be triggered because then that shows me what I need to work on. You know, it's whatever I have left to work on. You know, if I'm triggered by something, it's not necessarily the person. Just as if I say something, I'm 100% responsible for my intent behind saying it, but I can't control how the other person says it. I may want them to take it another way, but I can't reach in there. Hey, no, 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 you can't react like that. You can't take it that way. That's not what I meant. But I am still partially responsible because if I wrote off all responsibility for what I said, then that doesn't work either, right? So that's I had a teacher that said that, and it really resonated a lot because we got into these arguments of, oh, the impact is more important than the intent, right? No, no, it doesn't work like that. It's not this kind of all absolutes. To me, it's about responsibility, taking responsibility for my intent. And then the outcome that will feed back into my intent. And okay, is it them or is it me? Is it us? How do I need to change in order to have a better outcome for me and them, but also realizing I can't control how people respond entirely, right? So let me jump in here and answer your questions. They'll be fairly brief, but I think they're really good questions. The America has what is it? The politics of
Oh, you want to answer the questions? You want to
yeah,
start with
just
it?
really
Oh,
briefly and
okay.
see
All right.
see.
Yeah.
So I know that yeah.
And through your and through your own filters, that would be very good.
Hmm.
Yes. How would you describe the political system of the United States of America?
Well, it's supposed to be a democratic republic, from what I understand, a mix of these. So how would you describe that? And I would say we've come. It's not on track to be that. It's not really that anymore. And even just one brief aside, it's almost like we need a constitutional convention to maybe redo a lot of things. However, I don't advocate that either because we're in such a state I think of low consciousness that we would probably make it worse. We would probably come up with a constitution right now that's worse than it actually is. So yeah. So I don't. I mean, yeah. Hopefully we can get to a point where we could do that and improve on it. But for now, I think we're so far from that. It would be kind of a disaster with all the kind of corruption to go in there and rewrite it or something. Have a constitutional convention. Okay, the next one.
Yeah, yeah. Describe your feelings or reactions to the current state of U.S. politics.
Complete and utter disillusionment that I just want to put it on a shelf, and I do put it on a shelf for now, and don't get entangled and involved with it for the most part. Yeah,
And the last one's like this game, right? Where you have to finish the sentence.
sure.
So, politics in the United States.
Is triggering, divisive? Is it really worth my time? What are the solutions? And I've kind of don't want to deal with it. I think that yes, it's used for divide and conquer tactics for the most part. Yeah, and to control people. Oh yeah,
And then this
yeah,
word, right? There's, there's,
yeah,
there's this word. Find
yeah.
one word
That's a
that you
good
want to
one.
put out there. Like that's the hardest one, right?
Yeah,
It's
it
hard.
is.
But sometimes it's like the first one that comes through.
And I can't, it's two that keep coming up. Self-responsible care or care with self-responsibility. So the best of the left and the right, because that's a dichotomy. We're told we have to choose one or the other. There's so many other choices, we don't have to
Mm.
be locked into a false dichotomy. So to me, all the caring of all the good things on the left and the self-responsibility, you know, from maybe the all anything and all things good from the right, if there is any of the salvageable from either side these days. So both a caring, open heart and self-responsibility. So I don't know how to fuse that into one word, but I could just say middle.
But
Yes, yeah,
you had care, you had
yes,
care. So there's those things surround that.
sure.
It's interesting. Well, so there's a lot of words that, of course, I have
Mm,
in common, and also your discourse. I agree with several of the things in there. So we're not at polar opposites, but it's good to acknowledge the areas where we do have commonality. I'm less disillusioned than I used to be. Just throw that in through this artistic practice of mine. But there is one thing I do with that final word. I like to try it with you. In a different circumstance, I get these words, and then I'll ask other people. I have these words that other people gave me after asking these three non-confrontational political questions, and they're already baffled, like, what's that mean? But I'll say, when we listen in and we're doing active listening, we should use all our senses. And I'm having a really hard time today with taste. So if the word was care, right? Let's say it was care. What does care taste like?
That's, maybe comfort food, the most healthy, nutritious comfort food. So I don't know, pick your poison, not your poison, pick your care food there. I don't know. That's a really great question. I never really engage my senses on that level. So I don't know if I have to be more specific, but I would just give that as an instruction set maybe for choosing the taste. Yeah.
Yeah,
How about nourishing?
isn't
Let's just say
nourishing,
it tastes nourishing.
nourishing. Yeah, no,
I don't know if
that's good too.
that's not as sweet or
No,
as salty or earthy or
there's no
but yeah.
correct answer. It's yours.
Yes,
It's the
okay.
process, right? I think
Sure.
what happens is that we it creates new questions. I'm just happy with ask a question and the other person's got more questions.
Of course, yeah.
Very good. Then there's no absolute answers. And that also brings us into another place when we start thinking of taste and smell, those things that we don't use as much as maybe we used to centuries ago. And just to bring in a word and kind of put the two together and see how those things might happen. And it gets people thinking about it differently. And I also found that through that, I use it when I get triggered about something. I wonder, oh, what would that taste like? Just in my mind at the time, it like takes it down. First of all, I'm not reacting to it. I'm like wondering what that was, and I'm visualizing this a dish, I don't know, sour grapes or something like this. But then it's a way. It's a quick way to release that tension as well, to bring an association or a parallel and release it. And those are some of the funnest days I do, is when I ask people what these words taste like, and they're like, well, and some words are not polite words. People give me their words, and
BS, yeah.
and it's like, well, what does that taste like? Because I do them one after the other. I don't skip a word. Whatever the words were given to me, that's the next word I got. So I'm really sorry. You're the one that's going to have to do with this word. And they usually go for it, and it comes up with some interesting responses. It's just we all find different ways to different practices that fit for where we are at a certain time, and that's part of my process too, in a world that I used to be more disillusioned by the outcomes of all this. What I do have is outside, before I go to my car and I drive off, I have a few rocks that I bow to, and I remind myself of impermanence, dukkha. Anatta dukkha, anicca dukkha anatta. And
Yes.
so I remind myself to calm my mind in impermanence and suffering and non-self before I drive off, just to bring it down. And I do the same before I have a conversation with someone, to try to be as present as possible in the moment. And as an artist, I want things to be almost quick and immediate, right? There's this artistic practice that I invite other people to use. It's as well. So I read a ton of literature on the subject, and it's like, you need a college course to do this stuff. This is ridiculous. We're never getting anywhere if we got to get that deep into it. And you got to read this and do that and check your sources, blah blah blah, and all this. Whoa, we need something far more simple that gets straight to the point. And and the one I'm experimenting with that I find really working out is to engage with the quotation mark, other, and to listen in. And it's not just listen to that person, it's to listen to yourself and find commonality. And that, wow, I mean, for me, it's been, like I said earlier, transformational. Really changed my entire outlook of all things. Things are a lot quieter in my mind. My hikes through the wilderness are more imbued with the beauty of what I'm seeing, rather than ruminations. A lot of ruminations been left behind. And that space right there, that's a good space to be in. It's got pain for sure, but that's good. I'll take the suffering's part of it all.
It comes along with it, right? Until we're totally free from that. So what I meant by disillusionment, it's not that, okay, I'm going to be bummed out by politics or it's all
Mm.
hopeless and stuff like that. That's not necessarily, I guess I meant it more on a deep kind of spiritual level of that no matter what we see in the world or experience in the world is not going to provide lasting satisfaction. So it's included in that too, you know. So yeah, I don't think the answers are necessarily in politics. I don't think they're necessarily outside politics. It's just another sphere of existence where, yeah, but it's kind of a paradox too, because I see the value in what you're doing here and actively engaging. And I love this notion of putting, we don't normally think of using sniffer in our mouth when we're engaging with politics, right? So it's this great disruptor, and it brings us back to our senses because it's an immediate, you're kind of forced into something, association you don't normally make. Because usually when we're having certain types of food, it's a completely different experience, I think, than what we're normally related to politics. So, but it can be a great relational aspect and something we normally wouldn't think of, something outside the box, something that brings more consciousness and awareness and noticing and observation to a certain area of life that we normally wouldn't do because of your kind of ingenuity and creativity around experience like this. So it's kind of a great gift you're bringing beyond the narrow confines of how we've been corralled into viewing and responding to certain things. So it's a great disruptor, but a skillful one. So holding kind of an ultimate disillusionment, meaning that, yeah, that there's, I guess, there's more to what we're led to believe there is, and what we think of the world is not necessarily the way it is right off the bat, and what's really going to end stress ultimately in the world, but we have to kind of see and know it too in order to end it fully. So balancing these two things, I think it's a really great notion which you came up with here. I'm trying to think, there's something else in there you said too, but I'm blanking right now, but it may come back to me.
I was thinking of when you were talking of illusion, disillusion. I also see illusion like Mara. All the illusions that are before us. For us to certainly in my artistic exploration, the great disruptor in the sense of not being able to find commonalities with the other and greater divide is the more time we spend on our digital devices, how we use AI in the future, right? Being conscious of these things there's a lot. They're great tools, but when will the tools take over our mental process and how we function with one another? It looks like we're not going in the direction of speaking to one another anymore directly. So we're going to have to make the painful moves. And some of us, the kids, are having a harder and harder time. I also teach in the public schools on communicating to one another directly on a more emotional level than the memes and the short videos on TikTok that they're getting. I mean, they're conversing, they're having dialogue, but not. There's a few elements that are missing. And what is that going to look like in the future? Will they be able to exit their echo chambers and explore other echo chambers, or are they all going to calcify within their in groups? And that preoccupies me.
Is that what's missing? What else did you said something's missing? Is that primarily what's missing, or what else? What is missing that you see?
Well, there's of course, in the communication with others and finding the depth in our relationships. There's also, of course, having the moment to be able to have presence and calmness in order to quiet the mind, especially when we are constantly bombarded with messaging over and over and over on so many emotional levels. And only on two of the senses. I mean, this auditory and visual. We're missing on the other things. We have no concept of the mind for that's not really taught in the schools. I mean, there are classes in mindfulness. I do admire that. But it's got to be hard to do that when on the other hand you're like, okay, we're finished now, now go back to your computers and you can go do this with your games and bing 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 and it does all this stuff. The modeling we're doing, we have that's where our power lies. Okay, so I do see those as other forces to be reckoned with, that are political powers that that are manipulating us as people in order to go in certain directions. And unfortunately, I think it's untested, and we don't know really what the outcome is going to be. But there's one thing we do, like you were mentioning earlier, is our own personal reaction to things. And reaction, us, I'm thinking of action and non-action, how we relate, taking the step to speak to other people, to engage with them when the opportunity arises. And I would say that's our greatest political effect, political action. So I see we us all as political animals. Yeah, let's get
Yeah.
involved. You're not going to go vote. You're not going to go do this, and you're not going to join. One thing you can do that's super powerful is that.
Yeah, it's great, and I've said this several times, but the most profound, I've heard somebody say this, the most profound thing we'll ever do is speak with another human being. And I
Oof.
kind of wrote it off, oh, no, that can't be the case. But like, as I see more and more how language and speech is so powerful, and how I misuse that and abuse that in the past, and how I don't actually give it the credence that it does, that it can be really powerful. And that's, we just look at these free speech zones. Obviously, it's a threat to somebody if they're relegating it to such, in some areas, to such obscure little instances where most people won't even bother, right? So obviously, to me, that just okay, this is a powerful thing if they're doing that to it. It used to be like, I don't know, it was just kind of, oh, talk whatever, there's no, of course you might get in a fight or something if you say something, but to politicize it so much, outside of the normal means of like papers and stuff like that. But I also want you to say, what do you mean by politics anyway? So that's outside of what we're normally conditioned to see as politics. There's politicians, there's the left and the right in America, right? And there's lobbies, and there's a court, and there's an now being maybe more of a dictatorial branch, but that's neither here or there right now. But so yeah, like, what do you mean, like, human politics outside of what we're normally conditioned to do? And then I want you to go, so I don't forget these
Yeah.
things. Sorry, it's too much
Okay.
here,
Yeah.
maybe, but
I'll try to
the
remember.
you're right. I'll help you remember. But to come back to, I mean, AI this is a huge thing right now, and yeah, how do you see this in the solutions? Because yeah, I do see it where people are getting dependent, especially if people get so dependent they can't even make choices for themselves. I already find myself consulting it for a lot of choices now, and if it conditions over generations, I can imagine how people won't even be able to make their own decisions, basically, on some things, right? They'll have to consult it for everything. And then we have to, it can help like a tool, but we can't have it, I don't feel, take over. We still need like natural human consciousness and beingness to have a place, Otherwise, we're just turned into machines. I mean, that if you extrapolate this out way far in the future, I can imagine this is where it leads to androids and cyborgs. So,
Mhm.
in the transhumanists that want to merge with machine, it's just so crazy to me. Like, oh, it's a threat, so let's merge with it. Wait, what? Doesn't make any sense to me. So, okay. So we've got political definition, and then the AI thing. And I
Yeah.
thought there was one other thing I mentioned, but now
Well,
I
where
forget
does it
too.
take us? Yeah. So politics, I just see it as polis, the people, right? So it's the forum of us all. And so, and all the actions, if we're in the forum or not, that also has a political effect. If we don't vote, that is also a political action. When we go out and vote, it certainly has an effect. And also by all the multitude of small things that we can do, right? If we decide to take a bicycle over a car, if we hit a rock and do this, and all those things have, there's always action reaction. But I'm going to share something that just came to me last night, and I lost a little bit of sleep over it. Is after having, and this is about AI. I was having an interview like we're having now, except we weren't having a conversation. I only understood after the interview that the host was using an AI, I don't know which program they were using, to have a transcript of everything that, I mean, as an aid, I get that, but all the questions that they were asking were AI generated, and they were deep and bland. I'll tell you that, they were deep and bland, and they were right on the dot. And as soon as the next question came, it wasn't from a list of questions. It was just really on subject of where it would go next, right? And all the questions. And so it dawned on me that the host was not actually listening, didn't know anything about. my art project, anything about who am I, was not interested in. It was trying to generate content. So really feeding into the machine and using me to feed his machine. And then I thought back and I went back because I'm still kind of new at this. This is my third week going on podcasts, and I went back to the list, and I've done 14 or 16 of them, but 4 or 5 of them, I'm pretty sure also use that same thing. Like your
So you're
questions are real, but their
right.
questions were generated. So where does that take us in the future? That's why I want. That's where I'm going. Like that outcome is is well, that's a cyborg.
Yeah.
That's where we're going
So you're saying this was created in real time?
in
Like the
real
AI was
time.
generating these based on your response, it was feeding in that, and then it would choose from, okay, which algorithm, the algorithm was saying, okay, this is the question that's going to get the most engagement, the most
Hmm,
SEO
hmm.
value, the most, SEO juice or rise through the algorithms, or even accomplish some kind of agenda that they want to do,
Yes.
breadcrumb you into feeding into their agenda. And to make it even
And
more
whose agenda?
complex,
Whose agenda?
well,
Whose
right.
agenda?
That's
Right?
right. Yeah, exactly. Who's this they, right? But yeah, so right. And then even further troubling is deep fakes. So
Mm,
once
oh,
they
yeah.
have enough material on anyone, you can just make someone appear to say something they would never say, basically. They've already showed this on the BBC years ago, right? That they reconstructed like a president saying something he didn't even say. So that's really concerning if it gets in the wrong hands of that. And then sometimes it's so subtle that maybe they only throw one little fake line in there, and kind
Just
of
enough.
breadcrumb just right. And then gradually over time, you think of huge podcast hosts or something like that, and who's behind this and what's real and all this. It's fascinating mind F.
Mhm.
But I didn't know that this is a real time thing right now. It's
Yeah, so
actually
I
happening.
had to look it up, and of course, where did I look it up? I looked it up online, and there was such a
Yeah.
thing, and yes, where does that take us in the future? And of course, there's going to be AI podcasts coming up
There
specifically
already
for
is.
the
There already is.
individual artists.
You
There
could
already
feed
is.
it into this one Google thing and it will have these two AIs. You tell it a topic and it'll start having conversations with itself about this topic. I forget the Google thing that it's called. There's one podcast company that is flooding the podcast
Yeah,
directories
universe.
with AI produced podcast. It's
So these are the
completely no
choices.
humans
For the
involved.
choices we have now.
Yeah,
What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do?
right.
Like, and the only thing I can think of is like that's what I
Discernment
was saying
first,
earlier. Is
though.
at the base, at the like the bottom, where it goes so far at the bottom that we can't have these conversations unless we're listening and finding one thing we have in common, and it's got to be face to face. Because soon we're not going to be able to do even what we're doing today. You and I, with your listeners and sharing that. So we're going to be ended up one on one, and then it's the force of numbers, and that doesn't look good.
Now, why do you think we won't be able to do this in the future? What makes you
Well,
say
there'll
that?
always be because there'll be mistrust, right? Is it real or is it not? Right? We won't know very much. Just as much as I was fooled
Yeah,
yesterday and
yeah,
thought this, wow. And, I kept on complimenting the host, and I did with the other host. Like, you've got the best questions. These are amazing. You've
yeah,
really researched the subject a lot. You've spent a lot of time.
yeah.
I really admire that. Wrote a review, 5 star, great question, best questions ever
It's
asked.
all on
But then I lost the
autopilot.
humanity. I thought, it's like, oh, how come this person is like such an academic on the subject? How did
And
that
not
happen?
only that, not only that, these conversations here, of course, AI is scraping them and learning from them to even
Mm,
improve their models and
do
stuff
better.
too. I mean, it will get even more far out. If we go into metaphysics, you have some
Mm,
metaphysical people are saying that I mean, this is crazy, kind of more paranoid stuff, but who knows, right? I mean, I don't know. I'm just repeating information. This is not my own personal view that AI can be remote controlling people. There's this thing called remote neural monitoring, which is there was a book called Project Soul Catcher by an ex-CIA guy called uh, Dr. Robert Duncan. Well, you have to take everything CIA says with a grain of salt because they basically lie for a living. So who knows if it's real or not? But basically, monitoring brainwaves from remotely. It's just so bizarre what we live in. Like you said, yeah, the kind of having face to face reaction interaction, and then discernment, and being open, because it's so devastating to learn that we've been lied to, deceived. And that's one of the other reasons I withdraw from politics, because there's just so much lying. There's so much money that's anonymous buying politicians, basically. So, and you said our vote has an effect, and yeah, sometimes I would say local elections it would
A
have
lot
more,
more.
but yeah, because they tell you in political in political science and in university, I remember, is that your vote, unless your vote's a tiebreaker, it doesn't matter. Which technically yes, but there's other things and causes and conditions involved in that, and then the presidential election is by electoral college, not popular vote too. So it's kind of like this release valve. I see that if you certain institutions, they come to the people into like a forum as almost window dressing, because they've made up their mind, and maybe not, maybe this is not the case, but it seems like it could be if it's not in some situations. They've already made their decisions on what they're going to do, but they don't tell you that, and they present it like, oh, your voice is going to make a difference. It's going to have a say. You can air your concerns here and we'll listen to you. But all the while say, no, we've already made up our mind. This is how we're rolling it out. So this is like a pressure relief valve for people, that, okay, at least I'm letting off some steam. I feel like I'm being heard here, but actually, the money and power behind it is going to do what it does anyway. So, I mean, not to get so, negative around this, and I'm not saying that's always the case. And sometimes we can say something that will really penetrate and change and go deep, either into the system or, like you said, the people. This is supposed to be by the people, for the people, of the people, or whatever. So all it takes is for people to kind of come together and have I guess, a consensus, or some kind of choice, and then people in power are going to have to pay attention to that.
Mhm.
So there's all kinds of different tactics to do otherwise, but there's something very powerful in our voice and in our hearts and in our minds too. So that leads me to the question I would ask too: is your intention behind all this? You said a little bit of it, but was there some kind of outcome you were hoping for, or some kind of reason, or you just wanted to find out what happened? I mean, you kind of talked about the impetus towards getting you to do this, but was there other intentions involved in this project you took?
Well, at first I just go with the flow, but uh, now looking back and having all these conversations and exchanges and spending time on the subject, I realize that there's such a thing as a cognitive bias called the just world fallacy, for those that believe that there can be a just world. And I am definitely a victim of that, but I don't see myself as a
Justice is the
victim.
opinion of whoever's in charge. I like that somebody said that a long time ago. Justice is basically the political, or the opinion of whoever's in charge. That's what
But
they say
a
justice
just
is.
world and compassion
Yes.
for our natural world and for our communities. That's
Care.
where I'm going. Yes, your word of care. Yes, all of that. That's what drives me. And of course, every time I see it, it just confirms my bias. So, but nonetheless, not only does it, it's when I see it in other people and how they take it up as well. And they take the encounter that we have as the pretext and excuse, the invitation to go out and do the same. And that just blew my mind, because I've always been like, you got to do some big messaging and art that does this and in your face and talk to as many people as possible. No, this is the one. It's where we have the greatest control, right? And it has so much more power. And the research says it does too. The interpersonal contact, that the conversations, the storytelling between two people is much greater than hundreds, if not thousands, of memes and whatever, that you get online. It's a lot better. And we can do this. So that's how powerful we are. And why not exercise it? If there's a they don't want us to do it. So
Yeah.
that's exactly what we need to do.
It's beautifully put. I mean, we look at some of the biggest name podcasts, and a lot of times they're just one-on-one conversations. It can be really, really powerful. Obviously,
Powerful, yeah.
that's right. And even if people don't follow through and do that, it's just like you had with me with put a taste to this word, in the political context. It's just, oh, wait a second. It never occurred to me that way. And then all these doors kind of start opening up, or it stops my habitual patterning for just a second. And I see something. Oh, there's another choice here. There's a disruption where, okay, this could be skillful. Like, I can't figure this out immediately. So maybe I need to contemplate what's going on here. Just like going to talk, maybe I would never have enough courage to go do what you did, but wow, that's admiring. And I can what is it, vicariously live through you, or consider something vicariously. And just as we know, like watching things on TV sometimes will have an effect, right? Like I would think that like sports, right? If you're watching sports, it can help one's performance, even if you're not actually going and doing that, right? Or something like that. So I think I've heard these things, right? Like the mirror neurons or something. Like, yeah. So just even considering it, I think is significant as well. Even if one is not going to go follow through and do the exact same thing you did, it could lead to some inspiration for something else. And then, like the pizza effect, maybe you find out somebody got inspired by you to go do something, and then you learn about what they do, and then it informs your process, and then you go, and it just keeps compounding like that. So I think this is a really great thing you're doing here. I like artists because, this notion of kind of poetic license. And in a way, it gives us good excuses sometimes to try something outside the box that most people would think, oh, that's just a weird artist, that, no big deal. So it gives us kind of an allowance, or to get away with certain things under a guise. But I feel sometimes when I do things like, it's like some kind of infiltration or some kind of secret mission or something. And, that's my cover. Or I don't know what. It's just great that we can have people in today's society that do things out of the ordinary like this, that are actually admirable and skillful. So that I applaud and admire. So
Oh, oh, phew. Wow.
a lot of
I'm feeling
big
good
words
now.
there.
My ego
Yeah.
is going
Right.
fireworks.
Yeah. We got to be careful about that pump. And
Yeah,
then
I
me
know.
too, pumping my spiritual ego. Right. So, yeah, good point. Bring me back down the earth here. So, all right, David, I think this is a good place to start wrapping up. I really appreciate your help and time here. Like I've said today already. So why don't you tell people how that it just makes much sense what I just said there, but people understand. Anyway, so yeah,
Thank you so
appreciate you.
much. Thanks you
You're
so much
welcome.
for having me. It's having me on and having this conversation.
Sure.
I've learned some new things, and it is always great to share.
Great. How can people get in touch with you? And if you want to say anything, if you have any projects in the work coming down the pipeline that you're working on that you want to let people know about, that would be kind of cool too.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be at some national parks. I'm planning in the spring to go to Mount Rushmore in the United States. Never
Been
been.
there.
That should be good. And yeah, there's always new things coming up. I don't have a website. I don't do any of that. But when I have a YouTube channel where I just kind of post things, which is always fun. So I invite people to go see the quirky stuff I do on there. It's certainly not meant to be entertainment or anything like that. It's just an expression. So there's a lot of weird videos and abstract videos on a lot of different subjects. And I gave it a name, which is a whole other subject, but I call it triptych dialogue. And that's TRIPTYCH, and dialogue, DIALOGUE, triptych dialogue. Go check that out and write some comments. I don't get enough comments, so let's even on the digital world, we could have a little back to back, and I'll be glad to answer.
I like that word. I just learned about the triptych on these churches and old buildings, and it means
Yes,
a three, but then dialogue. So you're playing with things there. That's fascinating. So yeah, go check out his work. I did watch a little bit, and I like how your Instagram is now abandoned. You did that. I don't know the story behind that, but
that's another
you've
story. That's we
yes,
could
that's
come back on.
another
We could just do that.
right.
That's
So
ended. Full project ended.
yes, I
365
like that how
days.
it ended, because when Meta took over that, I just followed myself on a new account, changed and deleted all my content in protest, and started over doing something different. But yeah, whatever. So it's a topic for another time. All right, David, I appreciate this again. And yeah, check out his work, and thanks again, and bye everybody.
Thank you.